Thanks so much for having me, bud.
Of course, my friend's name is Adam.
Oh, is it really? Well,
Yes,
now you have two friends named Adam. There you go.
yes. His last name is Kagiwara. It's Japanese.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
hmm
Yeah, I like
I
that.
always like saying his last name in text. It's so cool just to Sir Kagiwara or however I text him.
That's right. I like that. Yeah, that's great.
Have you been involved with any shows that I grew up watching that involved any type of puppetry, like Between the Lines or Ubi or any other show similar to that style?
No, I haven't been involved in any of those types of shows, but actually, I've been fortunate enough. I have a podcast as well. It's called the Puppet Tears Podcast. It's Tears, not like the traditional puppeteers. And on that, we've interviewed a lot of those people, like Tim Lagasse, who was Ubi, and we've had other performers from behind the line and stuff on it as well. And I've kind of worked with them at other workshops, these types of people, and at the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, where that's just like the puppetry hub where a lot of
hmm
amazing intricate puppetry work gets done. Mostly what I do is like my own work and my own productions, without a
Okay.
doubt. Very inspired by shows like that, and of course, everything that Jim Henson did. But no, I have. Well, I've built puppets for some um, shows. I built the puppets for a show in New Zealand called Cooney's Kitchen, which was on was that not Nickelodeon? It's like some other type of a Nickelodeon like thing that they
Oh
had.
wow.
Yeah, and then I didn't perform. And they actually did want me to perform. I remember them asking me.
Right.
It was like, yeah, but there's no way we're really going to be able to get you to New Zealand for how
Yeah.
consistently we're going to be doing performances. I'm like, that's okay. If it was like a movie or something, I would have tried to make it work for like 2 months or something. But it seemed like
hmm
it was more steady work. And yeah, no, but they didn't need me though. They did wonderful show, and yeah, it was great. Cooney's Kitchen, that was called. As far as exercises for doing puppetry, like I would say, first of all, the best practice you can really do for puppetry is just doing more puppetry. And
Okay.
one thing a lot of professionals will know, the work of actually performing is few and far between. So you have to just love it. You have to want to do it for yourself and do your own little shows, whether it's on YouTube or Instagram, because the best way to build the stamina of having your hand over your head that long is to just do it. And it's one thing people don't realize. When I'm a puppet builder too, when you build a puppet, you want it to be as absolutely light as possible. You want it to be as light as possible. And I think almost every single person in the world can empathize with this, because we've all been that student in the classroom before who's had their hand up for a long time, right? When
Yes.
your hand's up, even without a puppet on it, your arm gets tired. You're like this. So you'd be surprised, even though a super light puppet, even if it's only a pound or something, like after time, it just gets
I
heavy.
remember the actor that was Bear in the Big Blue House. They had to crank up the AC.
Oh,
Very,
yeah.
very cold because he was in that big old suit.
Yeah. That's Noel McNeil. I'm friends with him actually, and he was actually also in Between the Lions. That's one of the people I was thinking about when you mentioned that show. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, well, especially it's a little different with a puppet like that, of course, because he's actually fully inside that puppet.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some extra obstacles in that, without a doubt. But yeah, but puppetry, it looks like kid stuff, but it's really, it takes a lot of work, and that's the other thing too, is a
hmm
lot of people, some people, like, they watch things like the Muppets and they're like, you know what, that looks like fun. I want to be a puppeteer. I hope that I can get hired. If they have an audition, I'm going to go for the audition. And they hope, a lot of people seem to think that they can just like learn these skills if they get the job. And
hmm
you really have to be a practitioner well before and be an expert in it. I mean, without a doubt, there's always things you'll learn if you were to get hired, but like you have to come in with those basic skills. And the only
Right.
way you can do it is by practicing yourself, doing your own puppet shows, and you have to love it.
hmm Do you think there'll be a resurgence of puppetry shows like back in the early 2000s, or do you think at least for the US, that type of style of shows has run its course.
It's interesting because I know a show just came out on Nickelodeon. It's called like Barbarian and the Troll, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen that?
I have
Or
not heard about
there's
it.
ads for it, and the thing is, it's really, really classic puppet, like almost like old style Muppet style. Because even you look at the Muppets, they're so intricate, those puppets. And not to like
Hmm.
make it seem like these puppets aren't intricately built, they're very nicely built, but they're very simple comparatively as far as design, which is an aesthetic that I would have kind of thought was gone. And one thing I like about that aesthetic, outside of it just being simple and charming, is hopefully that seems like something that's more achievable to people who are starting out. You might look at a puppet like Fozzie Bear from the movies and say, like, "Oh my!" I mean, it looks like it's a character that almost a live cartoon character, right? Nothing
Hmm.
about that character looks like it's made. However, you look at some of these characters, you can kind of, I mean, they're kind of simple shapes. I don't often think about it like a business. There's
Okay.
aspects of it that are definitely a business. Like once in a while, like I'll do commissioned puppets. I have plans to expand it. I'm calculating my growth, but I don't approach it like a business. So like for first of all, I do have a day job during the day. During the day, I'm an elementary school teacher. I'm an art teacher during the day, and that gives me a lot of freedom to be able to not have to. Well, it allows me to only do the projects that I want to do with my art, and my art is the
Hmm.
puppet. There's a lot of other friends that I have that are trying to make it as puppeteers, and they're relying on their puppetry for all their income, and that's great. And I give them all I wish them all the best. But I bet you sometimes they have to take on a project that they don't really want to do, and they take it on just because they need the money to pay their bills, which is totally understandable. And like for me, that kind of goes against the reason why I want to make the art. Like I want to make the art for my own expression because it's something that I love. I don't want to have to do a project that maybe I don't love because I need the money. So for me, it's been a business that hasn't made a lot of money for a long time. Again, it's growing. It's doing better now than it ever has been. And most of all, I'm happy. So in that way, it's successful because I'm just doing projects that I want. And since I do have my day job, it allows this just to be kind of extra money, whether it's money for my family, but more so, I just invest it back into this business in buying nicer camera, nicer equipment, a nicer sewing machine, things like that I need to make my art making process better. Because the other thing I'll say,
Hmm.
like with my YouTube channel, that's kind of my main thing that I do now outside of my job. And anything to make that process smoother as far as editing software, bringing on someone to edit some of my videos sometimes, which is something that's new to me. I've edited myself for the first 4 years, but recently I brought on not an employee, but someone, just someone that I can work with that I pay to be able to take on some of that responsibility for me. And it's been great. And it's only, you know, so again, so that takes away from me making money from the puppetry, but it
Hmm.
feeds back into letting me expand it and reach more people and hopefully just share more puppetry, more of my puppetry with the world, which is what I want to do. Like my goal is
Hmm.
not really just to make money with my puppets. It's for me to spread my love for puppetry and to get other people into puppetry as far as I can, because puppetry's been very good to me. It's been very good to me as far as like even like my mental health. Like I like making something is so therapeutic, right? And making something that is so expressive. Like first of all, making a sculpture is so much fun. But this is a sculpture that I get to make, and then it has a whole second life, right? And I grew up doing a lot of theater and stuff as well, and I love theater, but theater can get so complex so fast with all these
Hmm.
extra these big sets and stuff. With puppets, you can do smaller sets. With puppets, I can play two characters at the same time. Like I can't quite do that as an actor, at least not in the same
Right.
way. Easily. So there's so many advantages to, you know, I don't know, the DIY style, just because here's the thing, I love collaborating with people, and
Hmm.
that's something that's nice about theater is you get to collaborate with probably a lot more people. But with puppetry, No, actually, with theater though, you kind of rely on collaborating with people. It's harder to do a one-person show, right? And especially if you don't have money to pay people to be part of your project, like you can just do a lot more with puppetry than you can with other performing art forms, I
Hmm.
think, by yourself.
Have you done a show where you were doing more than two puppets? Not at the same time, but you would cut to a different scene or something like that with different characters.
Ah, that's interesting that you say that. Actually, I don't quite think I have yet.
Okay.
Honest, most of my shows that I've done like are like from 48-hour film projects and things like that. And a lot of time for those shows, we film in the real world, which saves us from having to build a set, of course. But a lot of those types of shows that we've done, there's only been pretty much like one puppet. Think of it almost like the TV, the old TV show Elf. Like
Mm,
it's all people, but there's just that one puppet character. So that's kind of the way, coincidentally, most of our projects have been, just out of the simplicity of using filming in spaces that we have. And that's the other thing too. Filming puppets is very different than just filming like actors. Like
mm,
there's so much logistics that goes into that. The puppeteer has to be able to see a monitor so they can see their actual true performance. Because in the beginning of my puppetry career, we did this local commercial, and they hired professionals to come in and film it, but they'd never worked with puppeteers. And not only did they not know our needs, they didn't care about our needs, right?
oh,
Yeah, because well, think of it. Because if they filmed a commercial and they talk to an actor and they say, okay, now when you say this line, look straight into the camera and then deliver your line, okay? You say that to a puppeteer. The puppeteer is down underneath like this, holding up their hand. Like, how do I know if my puppet is looking right at the camera unless
yeah.
you actually see the feed out of your camera? So having a field monitor for a puppeteer is not a luxury like it may be on other sets. It's a necessity. Unless you want a poor puppetry performance, it's a necessity.
Hmm.
So actually, but I'm sorry to take you back through an actual process if someone wants to learn it, and that's kind of what my YouTube channel is all about. It's about how to make puppets. If you just type in how to make a puppet on YouTube, probably one of my videos is the first thing you're going to find. So I do actually my main tutorial that I have is on building this guy right here, this green guy here.
Oh, okay.
That's which is a very Henson inspired Muppet style puppet, but it takes you from beginning to end how to make the pattern to even putting the whole pattern together. But if you don't want to have to make the pattern, you can download it for free on my website too. The exact pattern. There's some paid patterns on there, but if you go scroll down, you can find the free ones too. And I even tell people, some
Hmm.
people try to buy a pattern. I say, don't buy a pattern. Don't buy any of my patterns unless you've done the free pattern. Because if you can't do the free one, you're definitely not going to be able to do the paid one. They're a little bit more advanced,
Right.
And then some people, I don't want people to get over their head and regret. I think well, actually it's kind of a maker thing too. A lot of people buy something and they're like, I'm going to do this project one day, and then it's like 5 years later, it's like, oh, I never made that puppet yet, So
Hmm.
that's kind of part of the maker spirit. But that's the other thing too is people don't realize, you know, puppet making materials are expensive. Like foam is so expensive. Any cosplayer will know that, that foam is super expensive. And especially in puppetry too. We use some special foams, so like the a reticulated foam that's really good for not absorbing sweat, especially if you're going to be puppeteering for a long time. I use a lot of the
Hmm.
EVA foam, which is common in cosplay, because it's super light and also it's very, very durable. Very durable. It takes paint well, things like that. But furs are expensive. You go to Joann Fabrics or a local fabric supply store, you can get cheap felt and stuff for a couple bucks a yard. But if you get like a high quality piece of fur, which just so you know, they don't have high quality fur at Joann Fabrics. You have to actually go
Okay.
to like a website online, something like I think it's called Empire Fabric is where I get a lot of my fur. You're looking at anywhere from $20 a yard to $40 a yard, depending on what you're doing. Now, for people who do work with fur a lot, they say, "Oh, that's actually a good deal." Yeah, it is. But for people who are used to buying more craft supplies, that's a lot of money. For a
Yeah.
crafter, that might be your whole project budget, not just one piece of
Mhm.
one material, right? But again, it's the same for the foam. So if to make a puppet like this, at the end of the day, you're probably going to be spending, you know, you'll have materials left over to make probably more than one, but because of
Mhm.
usually there's like you have to buy at least 1 yard or at least this much foam, so you're probably going to end up spending close to $100 on startup costs of getting into puppet building materials. Again, you'd be able to make a few puppets out of that, but again, it just yeah, it's that's more expensive than some hobbies, but I mean, let's be real too. There's also hobbies that are much more expensive than that too. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Have you ever had a dream where you saw a particular puppet that helped inspire one of your own puppets, where you kind of woke up and were like, whoa, I really liked that dream. Let me see if I can make what I saw in that dream.
Wow, that's really interesting. No, I don't think with my dreams.
Okay.
Um, to be honest, I don't know even know if I really remember my dream. I can't even. I'm looking back. It's one of those things, right? Where it's hard to even remember your dreams sometimes. But I think if anything, where I may have gotten subliminal inspiration from my dreams is more of like the idea for a show concept, right?
Okay.
Rather than a particular design, like maybe like just the settings, like there's a show that I want to start working on, start building, that's going to be this alien puppet, right? And so I'm not saying that this literally came from one of my dreams, but maybe pieces of it, maybe certain environments that might be there or storylines. Yeah, I would definitely take inspiration from a dream or something for either something aesthetically how it may look or even a storyline for a particular episode. Yeah. I'd have to have my notepad right next to my bed though to remember it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you wake up, you remember it. You're like, oh, there's no way I'm gonna forget this.
Right.
A half later, hour later, it's just gone. It's just gone.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had days where I've had a particular dream about something. I'm like, oh, where's the notebook? And then I leap out and then I just start scribbling down words on a notebook.
Okay. So no. So what I was gonna say is, so not necessarily from my dreams, but one thing that has worked really well for me, like if you sit me down in front of like, at a coffee shop and ask me to write a script, it's possible. I've written scripts at a coffee shop, and if I make myself sit down and write, that's my process, right?
Hmm.
However, I find that I'm probably the most creative with interesting ideas by kind of just being put on the spot to tell a
Oh,
story.
okay.
And so what I tend to do is I challenge myself because, like I said, I'm an art teacher at an elementary school during the day. So sometimes when the kids are working, it's not every time, but sometimes I'll just start telling a story. Sometimes it's based on truth, maybe something that happened with my daughter or something like that. But sometimes I just make up a goofy story. I just make up a completely goofy story. And then in starting the story, I don't know where it's going to end. So I'm just making it up as I go along. But if I was writing in a coffee shop, I'd, you know, I could stop. Like, oh, I don't know what's going to come next. Let me think about it for a while. But if I'm telling a story live to my students, I can't stop and think about it. I kind of just have to say the first thing that comes out of my head, right?
Hmm.
So it forces me to come up with something. Now, just to say that improv story that I have might not be a gem, right? However, it gives me something to edit. I have a complete story now with the beginning, middle, and end. How can I enhance this, make this better? Hey, actually, if I have this end a little differently, it makes it a stronger story. So that's one thing that's been really helpful lately. Because another thing is too, like I've been writing. I haven't published any yet, but I've been writing like
Hmm.
short children's stories too that I'd like to eventually, illustrate and have that produced as well. But I kind of did that as an exercise to create puppetry stories too with my characters. So yeah, and I sometimes I just like look around. Like I made up this whole story about gumballs coming from a cloud just because I'm talking to a kindergarten class. I said, I got to tell you the story about this little boy, just your age, okay? And then I look up at and they were hanging, not a piece of art, but some worksheet that they did that was like a gumball machine. So I just looked at that and it was like, okay, gumballs in the sky. It's on the ceiling, right? And then this story that I think is actually really cute and I like it a lot. And I'd like to develop it further. But yeah, I think sometimes putting that kind of pressure on yourself, forcing yourself to be created in a way where there's no outs. Again, like if I'm sitting in a
Mm-hmm.
coffee shop, I can give myself outs. I can say, you know what, I can't think. I'm gonna go to the bathroom or I'm gonna go get another coffee quick, right? But again, if you have that live audience, you can't. So, but here's some people might be listening to this and say, "Hey, that's great for you, Adam. You're a teacher. You've got that mini test audience you can do this with on a whim whenever you want." What am I going to do? So now it's not as good, but I've done this for myself too, is just recording yourself. There's a similar, not the same, but a similar pressure when you're filming yourself. You don't want dead air when you're filming yourself, right? So there's a
Yeah.
little bit of pressure to keep the momentum going in telling a story if you're recording it. So another thing that I've done, and I recommend this in the safest way possible, is to record while I'm driving, right? So I just have my phone on a stand. I'm not trying to like record my face or anything. I just use it to record the audio. I hit record and I just start telling a story. I start telling a story to it, and that's really helped with again generating stories for my puppet shows and things that are harder to adapt for a puppet story. I might adapt for a like a children's book. You have to have something, right? You have to have
Yeah.
something that'll refocus it, and again that
Mm-hmm.
kind of established that would be different for different people. But yeah, that's the hardest part, just finding what it is that works for you. And when you find something that works for you, just make sure you remember it and hold yourself accountable. Yeah, that's all we're really finding is different ways to keep ourselves accountable to do this work, right?
Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll watch certain bits of a film that kind of has the tone I'm trying to write.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh, okay, this way they foreshadowed a sequence. Okay, I think I can this can add to my story or move it in a certain way, get the story along. And sometimes I can pull from stuff like watching bits and pieces from a sequence in a film
Mm.
if I'm stuck.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's a good idea too. I know some people have a little bit of a stigma for that about feeling that maybe they're taking ideas from ideas that weren't their own, but I don't feel that at all. It's in the same way people say that like everything is a ripoff of Shakespeare in some way, right? It's like where you get, and not only that too, like even like it can be, like I said before, it can be just small little details that inspire something. Maybe you just
Hmm.
see like I don't know something a character is wearing in the background, an outfit they have in the background, and maybe that inspires like a character for you even though this person never had a line. Maybe you're imagining the type of character that is. So yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, art inspires art, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the way I see it. No, yeah, I mean that's what everyone does. They just beg and borrow. Art, it's a building block thing, right? Everything we
Yeah.
do as a community is built off of the generations before us in some way. Almost everything is, and it's no different from art. It's no different from anything.
Hmm. Do you find that sometimes in certain locations even if it's something as simple as going shopping or getting clothes, you'll start visioning some idea, and as you're shopping, you're mapping it out in your head. Grab with the cashews, and while grabbing cashews, this is gonna happen, and then this thing
Oh yeah.
happens here, and oh my gosh.
Yeah, that definitely happened. A little less now just because I don't really like shopping. I don't find myself in stores that often,
Okay,
especially with like COVID and stuff now. But however, yeah, without a doubt, like if I go to a department store, like I have actually a couple shirts in my car, some I should say some sweaters in my car that I bought them. I'm not gonna wear them. I bought them because like the fabric is interesting. I was like, I think I could make a cool puppet out of this, right? And the same thing
hmm
with like you're saying, going down those aisles because like especially for puppetry and most crafting, especially props too, like you use things not in the way they were intended. Probably the most hodgepodge thing that people do in puppetry is using unusual plastics for puppet eyes, right? The go-to is using something like Easter eggs, right? But if you want something sturdier, like you get these weird toys or baby toys with rattles that have a nice round shape to them, then you can sand it and paint it. So, oh yeah, inspiration for puppetry is everywhere, especially
hmm
in like a dollar store or something like that.
With writing your shows, how do you manage, avoiding exposition-y dialogue or dialogue that's too on the nose? Because I know it's even though it's this type of format is different, you still don't want your dialogue to be too, exposition-y or on the nose.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. I don't think I have too much of a problem with that. Just because of the way that I don't like writing a lot, so I try to make my stories as quick as possible to begin with. And I mean, one a famous thing in doing theater and writing for theater is to show, not tell, right? And it's especially true with puppetry, especially because I've got a very good buddy of mine that we do almost all of our projects together. He's very wordy. He's a great writer, can tell a great story, but sometimes, in my opinion, it's a little bit on the nose. It's describing something that the action can be showing, you know, and it's just not necessary. I definitely live by a show don't tell kind of mindset, because one
hmm
thing that puppets do well is they talk, but they can be so expressive, having a puppet walk down and then just notice something and then look back and keep walking, like that says so much even without a word right there, yeah. I think it's also a matter of respecting the intelligence of your audience, right?
hmm
uh, yeah, right, because they know, and actually you look at a lot of movies, and so often the opening scene or couple minutes, there's very little or no dialogue. It's showing the routine, their everyday routine. Maybe it's a guy waking up, taking a shower, brushing his teeth, going down the stairs, going to get the coffee. All this exposition without any dialogue at all. And I would say that's probably, I would assume it's more of a mistake that a rookie and a newer person makes. But then again, we
hmm
have so much reference from even things that I'm talking about now that it's a better time than ever to to be able to make a good story. And there's so many
hmm
resources now too at your fingertips that are free. Again, like just learning things on YouTube. You can get a whole college career, a filming career, an audio career on YouTube, like
Yeah.
completely free. And not to mention, you can film your whole movie on your phone if you wanted to,
Yeah.
and edit it
hmm
and publish it in that same way, which is, I live by that. So many people are stuck to having things perfect, and that's something
hmm
really, I shouldn't say I try to avoid perfection. We all aim for perfection, but I'm fine at 80%. Because we all know that last 20% is 90% of the time. It's the same thing with building a puppet. So yeah, if you can get 80% there, go on to your next project, because you're always going to want to make things better anyway, and the best way to
hmm
make things better is by just doing more work. Like what you learn by, I can't think of one project where I really look back and think, "Oh man, I could do that better." Even if I got it perfect, just time tells you you could do better. You've developed
Yeah.
as an artist, and you develop faster by doing more work. And you'll do more work if you just, again, this sounds awful, lower your bar a little bit. Lower it to something that's gonna maximize your time output. That's what I would say,
hmm
especially at the beginning. There's a lot to say for quantity. That doesn't mean the quality is not important, but if you have a dart and you're aiming it at a bullseye, you might hit, you might not. But if I have a fistful of darts and throw it, at least for me, not being a dart expert, I'd say my chances go up higher by throwing more darts. That's another kind of philosophy that I live by,
Right.
right? And
I
not
used
to
to have this.
not everything's for everyone.
hmm
So if I do 5 projects that are shorter instead of one project that's longer and takes more time, I may hit 5 times the people, because maybe I'm hitting 5 different demographics of people based on, even, let's just go by genre for demographics, right? If I do just like an action movie that's really in depth and super involved, and I want it to be perfect, it takes me 5 years. I'm only hitting one market. But if I make some, 5 shorter films, one romantic comedy, one horror movie, one kids show, one this, I'm hitting a wider audience without a doubt, a more diverse audience. So, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that too.
I used to have an issue where when I had a story, I would say, I'm not going to start it until I find the perfect name for this character, or the perfect name for the town that they live in, or the
Yeah,
perfect street, and then it would never get written because I couldn't think of the perfect town or perfect name for the character.
yeah, that's a kiss of death. That is a kiss of death as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's a wonderful thing. When people are writing, they think it has to be perfect. When really, like it gets perfect in the editing process. And you can't
Hmm.
edit until it's done. That's a
Yeah,
big mistake people make is they edit as they go along. And that's a huge mistake I did for a long time. That's part of people say that's why some people like when they're writing a script. And when I say edit, I do mean like editing script. I don't mean like editing video for people who are listening. That's why some people like to when they write with a pencil and paper because you're less enticed to go back and change things. Whereas if you're on a computer, you can just move the cursor over. Hey, let me move this part here. Let me do this part here. And without a doubt, there's advantages to that. But however, it can distract you from going on with the story.
yeah, that has happened many times where so we're getting my way down. Like, oh, it's scene one. Let me go back up there and fix that. And then
Yeah.
I'm
Well, the
stuck
other
on
thing
scene one.
getting stuck with names and stuff like I try so hard not to do that that I'll just use placeholder names, right? I was like because at the end of often, not always, depends on the story, but often the name is not that important in telling the story, right? It's something that can be changed. I remember listening to I don't even remember what podcast it was, someone else who was writing longer novel books, right? And they didn't hit their word count, right? And their character's name was like I'm just gonna make up a name, John Miller, okay? And this whole like maybe novel, thousands of words, like maybe 40,000 word novel, and they needed like an extra couple thousand words, and all they did is they took like 2 or 3 of the characters and added a middle name to it, right? So instead of like I said, John Miller, it was like John Brian Miller, and just so things like that. So and my point in saying that is that changing that character's name or adding to the name did not change the story at all.
Hmm.
Okay. And again, of course, there's times where that is important, particularly if it's a title character that's named matches the title of the book,
Hmm.
or if it's something like even you think of like a story like well, I guess maybe you could have changed the name of Harry Potter in some way. Maybe Harry Potter people will be mad at me if I'm wrong. But yeah, if it was a different name, as long as it followed through all the same notes, yeah, yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say, but I would encourage people not to get distracted by things like that.
Yeah, that does happen sometimes with some fan bases. They tweak something about the character and they freak out. What? This can't, you gotta do what's in the comics or how it's been established.
Oh yeah, yeah, without a doubt.
Would you also say that comic books have helped with puppetry, and creating characters aside from, superhero abilities, but the characters and how they're written in comic books?
You know what? I'm not too sure. I don't. I was not a huge comic book person. I'm one of the Marvel movie guys, right? I watch the movies, but I didn't really read the comics. I think the most comics I read was the Spider-Man comics growing up. I don't particularly know of a straight line connection from comics to puppetry other than, actually, if anything, it reminds me of like comics remind me of animations, and animation is much closer connected to puppetry, I think, as far as like an animation is a puppet in a way. It's an animated puppet. And yeah, I think in drawing characters for comics, you'd learn a lot about gesture and expression in a way that that you wouldn't in live action necessarily, and it would probably help a lot in storyboarding a show. I think that's
Hmm.
probably where because storyboards kind of if you laid it out just right, it would kind of look like a comic book, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I think it would. I think it would. So it'd probably help. It probably helps a lot with developing a visual story. I think, even for movies. Yeah.
Have you ever had an idea where puppet characters had, a puppet world, and then they transitioned into a stop motion world, and then they transitioned into another style of animation before, where they jump into different realities of styles of types of drawing or animation or video.
No, I haven't thought too much about that because,
Okay.
well, I would say mainly just because, like, I mostly just use, come up with ideas that are adjacent to my personal skills, and I don't really have skills in like drawing animation and other forms of animation. So pretty much any idea I have, I just try to turn it into a puppet show rather than
Okay.
trying to go outside of my my niche art form. I think.
I think that would be an interesting show, where we see the characters jumping through. A Little Curious did that sometimes in the show. They would use stop motion and then they do animation and they do kind of black and white style animation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I know it's been done before. I think the
Hmm.
closest thing that's similar, but definitely not the same. Oh no, actually maybe it is the same. I think Family Guy did they did a whole episode where they changed different styles. Like then it was like a Disney style, then a Simpsons
Oh,
style, and then a this style.
okay.
I think there may have even been a puppet style, if I'm remembering correctly. I think the Simpsons have done some puppets. Actually, I know they've done some puppet stuff because my friends over at Swazzle built the puppets for them, or at least performed on it. I actually don't remember if they actually built it or if they just performed on it. But yeah, yeah. I mean, there's definitely challenges in that too. Taking something from a 2D art form. I was just watching a video about that the other day, where it's like they can cheat in animation, right? On perspectives, having the character look a certain way this when their head is this way, and look a little different when it's this way. However, there's like some hidden anatomy in there that they can play with and stretch things in animation that you just can't in the real world, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and especially too, and like a character's head shape can change so much based on the mouth movements they're making, whereas a puppet generally can't do that. That's kind of that. It just generally moves the chin. So yeah, you're
Hmm.
more married to certain silhouettes in puppetry.
Right. Are there any childhood snacks that have made it through childhood that you still consume, that have made it through all the years that you still enjoy?
You said snacks?
Yes.
Hmm. That's an interesting question. I would have to say, you know what, probably especially through my daughter too. I like Welch's fruit snacks.
Oh, okay.
That's definitely been one that's stuck around, I think. Compared
Yeah.
to anything else, that's probably the most snack-like thing that I stick with.
Hmm.
As far as that, and my daughter loves it too. It's kind of bad. It's kind of bad. She's 1.5 now, so it's a little early for it. But once in a while, we spoil her, and
Hmm.
more so just because I want to spoil myself with it. But I would
Right.
say that's something that's kind of carried through. I would say overall, though, my diet's changed a lot since I was a kid. Like when I was a kid, like obviously you grew up eating cereal. Man, I don't think I've had a bowl of cereal in
Yep.
years, and not because I don't want it, just because like I don't know. In a way, it almost feels kind of kiddie, well, especially like the box and stuff, right? But then again, look around me. Look at my room, right? You wouldn't be too surprised if you saw a character like this on a cereal box. If it was a new cereal coming out. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's actually not a reason why, but I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting question. Yeah, things
Hmm.
that makes you just think of all kinds of things that stick with you that you hold on to, right? I think that's happening. I'd like to think that's happening more with like people from our generation than maybe
Hmm.
like than my grandparents is much,
Right.
right? People holding on to pop culture nostalgia more than they probably ever have in the past. Other than music, maybe music is still a place where it's still held on to from childhood and things like that,
Hmm.
or certain era of your life. That's interesting.